you know that in the continent of Europe, it has both the largest country, Russia, and the smallest country, the Vatican? Hi friends, welcome back. Yesterday, we learned together that God loves us no matter what. And I really believe that's true. Do you believe that's true? Have you experienced the great big love of God? Here's the thing about the crazy story that we're in the middle of with Saul. It doesn't look like God loves him yet, does it? I mean, Jesus appeared like a light from heaven and spoke, but nobody could see him. And then when Saul stood up, he was blind. This isn't a story that looks like love yet, in some ways. But I think the very fact that God was chasing after Paul was enough to let us know that he does love him. So let's jump in to our story where we left off yesterday. We're in Acts 9, and we're going to start at verse 10. In Damascus, there was a believer named Ananias. Say Ananias. Good. The Lord called out to him in a vision. Ananias, he said. Yes, Lord, he answered him. The Lord told him, go to the house of Judas on Straight Street. Those are pretty specific instructions. Ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul. He is praying. In a vision, Saul has seen a man come and place his hands on him. That man's name is Ananias. In the vision, Ananias placed his hands on Saul so he could see again. Lord, Ananias answered, I've heard many reports about this man. They say he has done great harm to your holy people in Jerusalem. Now he has come here to arrest all those who worship you. The chief priests have given him authority to do this. But the Lord said to Ananias, go. I have chosen this man to work for me. He will announce my name to the Gentiles and to their kings. He will also announce my name to the people of Israel. I will show him how much he must suffer for me. This story just gets crazier. So God gave Saul a vision so he would know who he's expecting. The interesting thing about this story is that Saul did what he was told in that vision and after he met Jesus. So something in Saul's heart was already soft to the Lord. He already knew how to listen well. And actually, if I got struck blind, I'd kind of just want to know what happens next in hopes that I get my sight back. But this part of the story introduces another person that's really important to pay close attention to. Ananias already knew Jesus. He was already a follower of Jesus and was already obeying the teachings of Jesus. God knew that he could trust Ananias because Ananias loved God and he believed that he was a child of God. That's where Ananias already found his identity, as a child of God. And so when Ananias heard from the Lord, he knew to trust this voice because he had experienced God's great big love. Ananias had a choice in this, though. He had a choice. Remember I said that love needs choices? If I'm going to love you, I get to choose to love you. And God always chooses to love us. But the choice to obey and disobey also tells God how much we love him. And Ananias had to choose to obey in order for Saul to know what happens next. Our big idea today is that God is always waiting for us. Can you imagine? Poor Saul has been struck blind and isn't eating or drinking. Partly because this is so crazy and he can't wrap his head around it, but partly because he is in a posture of waiting. Saul had to wait for what happened next to know how the story for him would end. What he didn't know was that that would just be the beginning of God's plan for him. That what he was waiting for was a first step on that map that God had designed just for him. Patience is really hard. I have a really hard time being patient. And sometimes I know that God has a plan for me. Sometimes I forget it because I grow impatient. But when I go my own way and I'm not patient with God's plan, usually I end up needing to say sorry to either him or someone else. Patience is a tough thing to learn. In the waiting, in Saul's waiting, he heard from God about what would happen next. He knew he was waiting for a man named Ananias. What if Ananias had been disobedient? What if Ananias had decided that I can't do this, or this plan can't be for me, or I'm too scared because Saul has been hurting my friends and family and has been killing people that love Jesus? What if Ananias hadn't been patient with the Lord? The problem with being patient for a plan that you can't see yet is that you don't always know what you're waiting for. But if you trust God, if you trust that he made you for a purpose on purpose, then you know you're waiting for something that is good. God's plans are always good. His plans are always right. Now, there's a line in this story that gets a bit ouchy. God says that he has a plan for Paul that will include suffering. I think it's really important, friends, that we remember that just because God's plan is good doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean it's going to be rainbows and unicorns all the time. It doesn't mean that we're not going to come against opposition, just like Jesus' followers did with Saul. It doesn't mean the easy way. It doesn't mean the fun way all the time, but it does mean that God's plan is the right way. And if you can be patient with God's plan for your life, he can actually do more than you can ask or imagine in and through you. So will you say yes to Jesus? Will you say yes to God's plan for your life? Because he's super patient and he's always been waiting for you to choose him. So in your waiting for what's next, we can invite God to stop waiting for us and say yes to him and say, okay, God, no matter what you have next for me, I choose you. It's a big question, friends. Are you ready? Are you ready to follow the map that God has designed just for your life? Because he's been waiting all of your life for you to say yes to him.